thyroid gland is responsible for producing the hormones that regulate your metabolism. So if you suspect that your metabolism is a bit slower than it's supposed to be, then the minerals and the vitamins that we're going to talk about today could definitely support your thyroid function and help you maintain a healthy body weight. We're also going to cover the clinical manifestations of an overly active or underactive thyroid gland and what are the symptoms of those. All of the resources that I'll be using are linked down in the description box below if you want to check out something for yourself. Although hormonal health, hormone balance is very trendy right now, I feel like the thyroid gland is being very underreported, so we're going to talk a bit more about its main functions in our body. The thyroid gland is a main endocrine organ. This means that it's involved in the production of hormones. TSH is the hormone that stimulates the production of the other guys, and it is elevated when our thyroid gland is having trouble producing T3 and T4. T4 is an inactive form of the thyroid hormone, and it makes up about 80% of the total hormones produced by the thyroid, while T3 is the more important active form. It is converted from T4, not necessarily in our thyroid, but also in other organs and tissues in our body, such as the muscle or in the liver. These thyroid hormones have numerous functions in different organs and systems in our body, starting off with the one that you clicked on the video probably for. This is the regulation of our basal metabolic rate, our metabolism. These hormones also help us maintain our bodily temperature and not get too cold or too hot. Furthermore, the thyroid hormones are very important for our cardiovascular health, since they can boost our heart rate and increase overall cardiac output. I believe they influence the same types of receptors that coffee also acts on. Thyroid hormones are also critical for our brain function. In the pregnant woman, if her thyroid function is not in check, this could negatively impact the development of the baby and lead to it suffering from irreversible brain damage, impaired development of the nervous system. Last but not least, the thyroid hormones together with the growth hormone ensure that children, as they grow up, have healthy bone development. As I already mentioned, you could either have an overly active thyroid gland, this is called hyperthyroidism, or you could have an underactive thyroid gland, which is called hypothyroidism. The autoimmune disorder that is related to having an overly active thyroid is called Graves' disease, and the opposite, so the autoimmune disorder for the underly active thyroid gland, is called Hashimoto's. Those two have very distinct symptoms that are opposing each other. For example, if you have an overly active thyroid, you would be experiencing heat intolerance, also restlessness, anxiety, insomnia, increase in appetite, weight loss. While if you have an underly active thyroid, you would be suffering from weight gain, a decrease in appetite, low moods, apathy, fatigue, cold intolerance. So you could definitely not confuse one disorder with the another. Assuming that you don't have the autoimmune kind of hypothyroidism, you could be experiencing these negative symptoms because of malnutrition over a longer period of time. Malnutrition could have two different meanings. The first one is not consuming sufficient amounts of energy and being at a very dangerously low body weight. In fact, a lot of the research that is done on patients that suffer from, they all find that these patients do suffer from hypothyroidism. I'm pretty sure you've heard of the phenomenon adaptive thermogenesis. I also spoke about this in a metabolism video that I made. The thyroid hormones are one of the big players here that influence this adaptive response of our body when it tries to maintain the body weight that it's at. The second meaning of malnutrition is not supplying your system with the necessary nutrients that it requires to maintain healthy organ function. And now we're going to talk about these very important minerals and one vitamin on the list that support thyroid hormone production. The first one on today's list, and probably the most popular and important one, is iodine. Iodine is fundamental for the structure of the thyroid hormones. The numbers 3 and 4 actually refer to the amount of iodine ions that are incorporated into these hormones. Logically, without sufficient amounts of iodine, your thyroid gland wouldn't be able to produce these hormones no matter how hard it tries. If you do not supply yourself with enough iodine, this leads over time to hypothyroidism and an unduly active thyroid gland, but it is also enlarged at the same time since it gives its best to catch all of the available iodine that you have in your system. This specific physical clinical manifestation is called goiter. I really hope I'm pronouncing it semi-correctly. I always have trouble pronouncing words. Here it's important to mention that excessive amounts of iodine could also negatively impact your thyroid function and lead to hormone production shutdown, which is also not something that you're striving for when you want to regulate your hormones. This could also increase the risk of developing the autoimmune conditions that are connected to your thyroid glands. Luckily for all of us in developed countries that are watching this, authorities have already taken a step to ensure that most people don't suffer from an iodine deficiency. When you go to the grocery store and buy salt, you probably see that on a lot of the packages it says something about iodine. This is because it is being fortified with iodine so that this specific deficiency can be ruled out and it does not impact negatively not only the people consuming the salt, but possibly also their offspring if the person is pregnant. However, in developing countries, this is not always the case, and those are also the areas where iodine deficiency is more common. Apart from iodized salt, we don't have a lot of food sources that could supply us with iodine, unfortunately. Some examples here are seaweed, fish, seafood, and dairy, and that's pretty much most of the sources that contain iodine. The list is not very long, but luckily the next time you go to the grocery store, you just grab the iodized salt and then you would be good to go most of the time. Our number 2 for today is another mineral, and this is selenium. Selenium plays a dual role when talking about supporting our thyroid function. The first one is its importance for the enzymes that help convert T4 in the active form T3. The second role of selenium is its importance for the function of the enzyme glutathione peroxidase. This is an antioxidative enzyme. Antioxidative enzymes help neutralize the reactive oxygen species, the oxidative stress in our body, and in the context of our thyroid function, this is crucial since the act of hormone production itself does generate some reactive oxygen species, unfortunately. Insufficient amounts of selenium in research have been associated with an increased risk of developing the autoimmune conditions, Graves' disease and Hashimoto's. The food sources list for selenium is fortunately a bit longer than for iodine, but it is again a bit specific. The most potent source of selenium that you could think about is Brazil nuts. Here, 1 or 2 nuts, 3 maximum per day, is already more than enough to supply you with sufficient amounts of selenium. And you definitely should not overdo those, since selenium in high amounts can also be toxic to our systems. Other not so extreme sources include red meat, fish, grains, especially if they're fortified, also sunflower seeds, eggs. So we have a bit more room to explore different food sources. Don't worry, those are not as extreme as Brazil nuts and are not going to lead to an overconsumption of selenium. The third mineral on today's list is one that I already talked about in my previous video about the nervous system, but we're talking about it again because it is again of high importance, and this is iron. Iron is incorporated here in the hemoprotein enzyme called thyroid peroxidase. This enzyme is crucial for the oxidation of iodine so that it can be correctly incorporated into the hormones T3 and T4. If you do not ingest sufficient amounts of iron, then the function of these thyroid peroxidase would also be diminished, which would lead to a decrease in the production of these hormones. Since critically low levels of iron lead to anemia, there is a connection, therefore, between anemia and hypothyroidism that has been established in research. What's surprising is that it's a bidirectional connection, and it has been found that hypothyroidism, through a specific mechanism of impacting gene expression, can actually exacerbate anemia. In case you haven't seen the previous video, we're talking about food sources of iron again. We have to mention that here animal sources and plant sources are not equal. Animal sources contain heme iron, and this type of iron is more bioavailable to our system. We absorb more of it more properly. And food sources that contain heme iron are primarily red meats and organ meats, but there is also some iron present in eggs, for instance. When talking about plant sources, we have non-heme iron, which our body doesn't appreciate that much and doesn't absorb as much of it as it does from animal foods. However, non-heme iron makes up most of the iron that we consume, since it's present in a lot of plant sources such as spinach, lentils, also adding a non-plant source, but this is technically a mixed source. Dark chocolate also has some iron in it. If you are somebody that's plant-based, I recommend that you go and check out your iron levels, especially if you're experiencing fatigue and low energy more frequently, since even not necessarily iron deficiency levels, but just subclinical levels of iron can have some negative influences generally on your energy levels and cognition. And this is even probably more important if you're a woman, since women require almost 3 times the amount of iron that men do. The last mineral for today, but not the last nutrient, is zinc. Zinc is also a mineral that I talked about in my previous video about the nervous system, and you're probably going to hear about it again in a future video, since it's involved in hundreds of enzymes in our body. And in the context of today's subject, it has 2 very important roles. The first one is the proper function of the thyroid peroxidase enzyme, where iron was also involved. And the second role is the role of zinc in our antioxidative defenses. It helps again lower the oxidative stress in our body and regulate inflammation. According to research, insufficient amounts of zinc are linked to lower levels of circulating T3 hormone in our body, and therefore are also linked to the enlargement of our thyroid glands or the goiter. Zinc in food products is not as problematic as iron or as iodine. It is present in a bit of a larger list of foods, including red meats, fish, dairy, dark chocolate, cashews, lentils. Here I have to mention, unfortunately, again, that plant sources, specifically lentils, could not provide all of the zinc that's technically in them, since they also contain some compounds called phytates, which can bind to zinc and limit its absorption in our gastrointestinal system. Phytates are not necessarily bad or toxic, just in this specific manner they prevent our body from absorbing zinc. The last nutrient for today is also the only vitamin that we're going to discuss, and that is vitamin D. Vitamin D and its role in the thyroid gland is a topic that is not exactly clear yet. Research has shown until now that there are some vitamin D receptors present in the thyroid gland. Additionally, vitamin D is vital for maintaining good immune system function, and in the context of autoimmune disease, this becomes more than important. Vitamin D boosts our innate immune response. This is the immune response that we're born with. It's non-specific, it's rapid, and it is supposed to fight any pathogen that comes your way, while the adaptive immune response, this is the immune response that is being inhibited by vitamin D. This develops slowly over time as you age and you're being confronted with specific pathogens, and because of this, it is also more highly specific. This adaptive immune response is usually exacerbated in autoimmune diseases, and this is why vitamin D might play a key role in managing Graves' disease or Hashimoto's. Vitamin D in food sources doesn't really help people's vitamin D status. Unfortunately for us, the main way to get vitamin D is from sunlight. You already have vitamin D precursors in your skin, and when you're exposed to sunlight, this converts this precursor into vitamin D3, which is the form that our body likes to use. Right now in the winter, you probably know that it's most wise to supplement vitamin D if you live in the northern hemisphere. And when you get towards springtime, you can think about going out in the sun with maybe for half an hour or a bit more than that, depending on how much of your skin is exposed, because this is also important for how much vitamin D you're going to produce. In the summer, midday, about 10 to 15 minutes are completely enough, and then you should be done with your vitamin D production for the day. Last but not least, we're going to mention two things that are important for thyroid function, but they're not managed through supplying only one nutrient, one vitamin, or one mineral. The first one is overall oxidative stress and inflammation. This is because of the negative influence that oxidative stress has on our cells. It leads to cell damage, DNA damage, protein damage in so many organs and tissues in our body, a worsened immune system function, and all of this could lead to the development over time of an autoimmune disease. The second thing is something that is so 2025 coded, and this is a good thyroid axis. I feel like we have a good something axis for every organ right now, but this is a new field of research, and it does indeed appear as if our gut could be involved in so many other things that we have never thought about before. The gut-thyroid axis allegedly is the bidirectional relationship between the gut and the thyroid glands, and it actually makes sense since our gut is responsible for the absorption of these key vitamins and minerals that regulate our thyroid function. Secondly, our gut is also involved in the metabolism of these thyroid hormones. So you see how if one of those two things are not regulated, this could lead to an improper function of the other. And to finish off, if you suspect that your thyroid gland is not functioning in the most optimal way, the wisest thing is to go and get your hormonal levels tested, and then make any assumptions about supplementing or incorporating this and this food in higher amounts into your diet. This is the wisest way to go about this so that you don't end up doing more harm than good. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that you enjoyed the contents of the video. Let me know if you did, and also if you have a topic you would like me to discuss in the next one. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe even check out my website. It's linked in the description, and I even have my own nutrition counseling services on there. Thank you again very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.